What did we see in part 1? The island of Aruba, which still has close links with the faraway Netherlands, with its capital Oranjestad in Dutch-Spanish colonial style. Curaçao, another of the ABC Islands, was also taken over by the Dutch from the Spanish in 1634. And the closed row of colourful gabled houses in Willemstad are a surprise. Finally, the third ABC island, Bonaire, with the capital Carindique. It is actually more like a big village with a fort and fish market which runs along the coast and only wakes when the cruise ships arrive. Grenada, the spice island, where muscat and other spices grow on the fertile volcanic soil. With St. George's and the inner harbour, framed by houses in French and English architectural style. Barbados, British without interruption until 1966, prospering considerably through its plantation economy. Trade and construction made Bridgetown the great Caribbean capital. St. Lucia moved back and forth between the colonial powers several times until it finally came under British rule. And Castries has burned 4 times in the last 200 years, but was rebuilt each time. St. Vincent, the dream for nature-conscious travellers who like a little adventure. Kingstown is on a bay below Mount St. Andrew, with arcades, a fort, 3 churches and a botanical garden. The flower island Martinique belongs to the islands under the wind. The island capital, Fort-de-France, welcomes the arriving ships directly at the harbour with the Parc La Savane. One feels like the buccaneer Pierre Belin as he founded the first French colony here in 1635. The historic centre looks like a small French town, where one can stroll through the romantic alleyways without any worries. The Schulze Library mixes Byzantine, Romanesque with Art Nouveau. Designed in 1889 for the Paris World Exhibition, but brought here afterwards. Next to it, a colonial style for the government and the governor. And finally, the city palaces of the sugar barons, plus the city hall and theatre. The colonial style with the iron balconies is reminiscent of New Orleans. The sugar business provided incredible wealth. Which is how the special construction of the Cathédrale Saint-Louis could be financed. It is now earthquake-proof, since 6 previous churches were destroyed. Colourful stained glass windows with scenes from the life of Christ decorate the supportive metal framework of the arcades and dome. Everything comes across as a mixture of Caribbean lust for life and French flair. The fortress Fort Saint-Louis was built in 1639 by the French under the rule of Louis XIII. With massive walls and bastions and a direct view of the bay. But the Dutch and English repeatedly attacked, and at times they also managed to capture the fort. Every colonial power was expanding, and the English also once succeeded in attacking the fortress from the land. Fort St. Louis was always a perfect place to defend. The island tour leads to the south, to the village Les Trois Îlets. In 1763, the latter French Empress Josephine was born on the plantation La Pagerie. Napoleon married her in 1796, and the small Caribbean island thus gained great influence in France. Today, the plantation has become a museum of the incredible story of Josephine. After her husband was guillotined during the French Revolution, she gave in to General Bonaparte's courtship. In 1809, the marriage was dissolved due to childlessness, but Josephine never returned to this flower paradise. The journey continues south along the coast. But the white gold also caused much suffering. Slave ships brought thousands of black Africans who were forced to work in the sugarcane fields. The harrowing slave memorial is meant to remind us of the indescribable suffering of slavery. After a short drive, a big boulder can be seen rising out of the sea. And at the end of the tour, we visit a rum distillery with a chance to partake in tasting. One learns about the rum production and can also see the new factory. The volcanic half of the island appears to show nature from its better side. A giant old cheese fruit tree outside the factory gates. Or a fully active earth crab. She feels at home next to the factory, where the rhum agricole is produced from pure and fresh sugarcane juice. Modern motorways lead the good-humoured tourists back to the capital and the port. For quite a while, one of the Caribbean's greatest natural disasters was forgotten: the eruption of the Pelée volcano. The island of Guadeloupe is a Caribbean paradise where the French successfully mixed with the Creoles. The name of the capital of the island, Pointe-à-Pitre, goes back to a Dutch fisherman named Peter, who settled here in 1654. The markets are beautiful, colourful and vibrant, and the open market hall is a jewel of colonial architecture, full of spices and natural products of the island. Creole clothing was also retained. Again and again, earthquakes, fires and hurricanes hit the city. But the houses and churches were rebuilt and improved. like the impressive cathedral, which, having been reinforced with iron, was called Iron Cathedral. And that is how Pointe-à-Pitre became the most important port of the archipelago. The drummer Velo is remembered, as is the factory director Perse, whose colonial-style villa became a museum. The central Place de la Victoire is framed by old colonial houses with beautiful iron balconies. Mostly the merchants lived here, as the harbour is directly connected to the square. The square is graced by the monument of Guadeloupe and her children under the stern eye of the former governor. Today the old harbour of the old town La Darse is quiet, and next to the harbour basin, colourfully dressed market women sell their fruit. The island excursion leads first to Basse-Terre, the southern part of the dual island, right inside the rainforest. To roam the wilderness of Parc National is like a little adventure. The almost impenetrable jungle first must be surmounted. The 300 square kilometres of natural park around La Soufrière volcano were declared a biosphere reserve by UNESCO in 1992. The river courses are marked by dragged boulders and are popular as a change from the jungle, even when there is little water. In the nature sanctuary, the waters tumble wildly and wonderfully into natural pools. Afterwards, we visit the village of Mourne-À-L'eau on Grand Terre. The famous cemetery is one of the sights of the island. The black and white tiled mortuary houses are arranged like a chessboard on the slope. On All Saints' Day, people come to honour their dead and light their graves with candles. On the coast, one open-air bar after another attracts visitors with cool mixed drinks. On to the beach of Le Moule, the only town on the Atlantic coast. Hurricanes destroyed the city, but the beach was always there. The viewpoint Point des Châteaux is the most eastern point of the island. Here the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean meet. A rough but attractive landscape where the forces of nature can perform their complete repertoire. And there's still time for a refreshing ice cream. Until finally, after a short resumption of the journey, the visit to Sainte-Anne Market marks the end of the tour. It is a typical Caribbean market, directly on the sandy beach. Here they sell juices, rum, clothes, vegetables and souvenirs. a last chance for souvenirs, in memory of the island of beautiful water. The island tour to the two such different parts of the island comes to an end, but we take an unforgettable memory with us to the next island. Slowly the morning mists dissolve, and another island dream appears. The island of Antigua, with its capital St. John's, is the largest of the Leeward Islands, which form the northern end of the Lesser Antilles. Right next to the cruise ship pier, the Heritage Quay begins with the colourful houses that were once warehouses for sugar and coffee. Several alleys have been laid out in a chessboard pattern away from the harbour and lead past shops and restaurants. The market is loud and colourful, in keeping with Caribbean temperament. The scent of mangoes, pineapple and papayas lingers in the air, and women skillfully offer up these paradisical fruits. Despite some natural disasters, the city and the island have survived, and the old wooden houses shine in fresh colours along Church Street, which leads to the cathedral. Already the way up the hill leads through the impressive cemetery to the Anglican Cathedral, one which defied earthquakes and hurricanes. Two white towers in Georgian style, and inside dark pine wood radiating warmth and historical dignity. The government house was built in the 17th century and later became the residence. The old courthouse was turned into a historical museum, with exhibitions about the indigenous people who already lived here when Christopher Columbus discovered the island. You can also see rare shells, dried sea animals, and interesting geological features. And the lives of the slaves and the former sugar business are also addressed. In front of the building are old machines from the sugarcane era. The island tours start at Heritage Quay. In an open car, the journey leads up the hill behind the bay. From the former guardhouse, Nelson Bay can be overseen very effectively, and previously this helped the guards to detect potential enemies. Today, the view from up here with the sailing boats looks like one from a picture book. Continuing down to the bay. We are, through a well-organised introduction, told about the population. Nelson's Dockyard served the British as the most important Caribbean naval base in the 18th century. This natural harbour, which cannot be seen from the sea, was regularly enlarged by the British. Famous British admirals like Horatio Nelson commanded from here and initiated the Battle of Trafalgar against the French. The museum in the former admiral's house documents this time. Here in particular are items from the warships, as well as the admiral's bed and death mask. And magazines, barracks and workshops can be viewed and visited. They were the largest warehouses in the Antilles, where mainly sugar was stored prior to transport. And in front of the boat sheds, you can still see the columns. In the south, sandy beaches are inviting for swimmers. And to the east of the island, windmills mark the former location of the oldest sugar plantation. In the first plantation of the island, a museum shows the origin of the sugar industry here. And at the northernmost point is the Devil's Bridge, a natural stone arch of rugged limestone rock, where this tour ends. Back in St. John's, it's now clear why the English loved and defended the island. Haiti is an island state on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola in the Greater Antilles. Now independent states have gradually emerged from the dark shadows of an inglorious past. They inhabit a tropical world, an exotic Caribbean island that consists of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The western section of the island is surrounded by a wild and rocky coastline and untouched natural landscapes that are waiting to be discovered. Here there's a bountiful variety of magnificent fauna and flora that amazes those who come here. And this wealth of plant life also exists underwater in azure blue lagoons. The Arawak Indians named the island Hayti, land of mountains, and later Columbus changed the name to Hispaniola. But it has always been the gateway to Caribbean paradise. Tropical rainforests that reach almost to the sea, and crystal clear turquoise water. A perfect place to relax in one of the most beautiful places on Earth. All the descriptions of this island paradise set amid the Caribbean are true, especially the incredible wealth of colour that makes it so easy to detract from any normal routine. For these people, music and dance are as important as the air they breathe. The island's exotic natural beauty and temperate climate is simply a bonus. They adore their magnificent island. And she particularly enjoys entertaining her guests and helping them experience the Caribbean atmosphere. The suffering of former slavery seems forgotten, as is the arduous road to the first independent Black Republic. Jamaica. Montego Bay recollects the days of slave labour on the plantations. In Jamaica, the British colonial country seats are called Great Houses. Sugar Baron Palmer had this imposing building erected on a hill. Here there's a special feature, Martha Brae River Rafting. The leisurely jungle adventure on the calm river can begin. At the front of the narrow swaying craft stands the raft captain, who skillfully steers the raft with a long bamboo rod. Here on the north coast, Christopher Columbus landed in 1502 during his fourth journey to the New World. In swimming attire, more than 1 million visitors a year attempt to climb through the spraying torrents of the water of the Duns River Falls, whilst linking hands in a human chain led by an experienced guide. Into Ocho Rios Bay flow not 8, as its Spanish name leads us to believe, but 3 rivers. At the market, goods are sold, haggled over and exchanged. Through metre-high ferns, the winding road ascends a hill outside the town. The Coyaba River Garden is located here, an oasis of relaxation and tranquility. This well-tended botanical garden is open to the public. In the language of the Arawak Indians, Coyaba means paradise. Harmony Hall is an immaculate manor house from a plantation, and James Bond Beach was once the winter retreat of English author Ian Fleming. Our next stop, a visit to the Sun Valley Plantation. In addition to bananas, citrus fruit, papaya, melon and apples, various spices are also cultivated here. Expansive fields of coconut palms dominate the plantation. Its fruit is food and drink. Wood, leaves, fibres and shells are used. But also banana plants and various spices are planted here and processed on a large scale. Continuing in the direction of Port Antonio, the Somerset Falls are to be found. The Daniels River rushes towards the sea in diverse cascades through a multicoloured garden landscape. Port Antonio. In Harbour Street, the buildings indicate the prosperity of the banana traders who exported their goods to North America. The small island outside the city was once the private property of Hollywood legend Errol Flynn, who hosted his famous parties here. The black gold of the Blue Mountains enjoys a legendary reputation among gourmets. It's mainly exported to Japan, as the price it demands in Europe and North America is astronomical. Coffee has been cultivated on this Caribbean island for 280 years. And rum is also produced here, the sugar water of the Caribbean. At the furthermost point, the mighty Fort Charles was constructed here because of its strategic position. It's one of the most beautiful and best-kept fortifications on the island. The Great Earthquake of 1907 almost completely destroyed Giddy House. But the lonely gravestone of Admiral Horatio Nelson still stands. Kingston is the capital of Jamaica. This former pirate stronghold is a lively mixture of joie de vivre and reggae music. The cultural, economic and political centre. Bob Marley, the uncrowned king of reggae, has a museum dedicated to him. After the Spaniards had given up their first colonial capital, they founded Spanish Town. Lover's Leap is the name of a rocky outcrop with a lighthouse and legends of tragic lovers. Further to the west, the route travels a hilly coastal road to Treasure Beach, a peaceful place to relax. Black River is a port city on the western south coast, which became rich as a trading place for logwood. In the fishing harbour are the boats of crab fishermen who earn a modest living from these tasty crustaceans. In the small harbour at the mouth of the Black River, tourist boats are being prepared for the day's outing. The water appears to be black due to the darkness of the riverbed. Heron and other birds hide in the green of the riverside plants. But the main feature is the alligator. The green beaches of Negril on the western tip of the island are world famous. The sand shines golden and the sea breaks turquoise green to blue in all its glory. Fishermen with their small boats still go out to sea and supply the tourist hotels with their fresh catch. The isolated beaches realise the dreams of holidays. The paradise in the Caribbean casts its spell on everyone. Soon, worries are forgotten and daily concerns drift away. They just no longer seem important. All that matters is solitude, the fragrant breeze and the relaxing sound of the surf. This is the way to enjoy life. Now all that's missing is the world-famous sunset, which is celebrated each day in Rick's Cafe. A dream island. Cuba, with its capital, Havana. The Caribbean metropolis that for many decades has been so little loved and so badly neglected. Breathtakingly restored beauty alongside unbelievable ruins. Everywhere there is joie de vivre, and nowhere else are the cocktails mixed better. The Queen of the Antilles, in a country that lies between sun and socialism, between rumba and revolution. Havana, with its population of 3 million, is the capital, the heart of the island, with a pulse from the past which still beats today. Everywhere there are small cafes and old city palaces around the Plaza Vieja, and the old classic cars are also closely associated with Cuba. Close by lies the Plaza de la Revolucion, where Fidel Castro once gave his many speeches. A 94-metre-high dome crowns the Capitolio, and in the exact centre of the room, a 24-carat diamond marks the symbolic starting point of the motorway to Santiago. In front of the Capitolio, photographers and carriages await their next customers, as do entertainers with their animals for their fans. Whether it be the Teatro Marti, the old tobacco factory, the famous Bacardi house, or the Floridita bar, everywhere there is a feeling of nostalgia. The Red Star and portraits of Che Guevara adorn modern Pinar del Rio. And in the old town, colourful buildings with beautiful pillared corridors demonstrate the former wealth of the country's independent tobacco growers. And then the evening, and true life begins, with music, dance rhythms, and fiery Latin temperament. A visit to a tobacco factory is a must. Cuba's cigars are world famous. On a tobacco plantation, we meet a famous planter who has granted us permission to visit. The extensive, endless tobacco fields are brown gold for the country's economy. Like the backs of massive elephants, strange earth formations emerge from the valley of Sierra de los Órganos, christened Valle de Viñales by the country's seafarers. The tropical climate, with its frequent rainfall and the fertile soil of this region, provide ideal growing conditions for its beautiful flora. The high protective mountains surround the picturesque Viñales Valley and contribute to the mysterious, timeless atmosphere of this region. A hidden dream landscape that resembles a fairy tale world. It is thought that this region was first inhabited 6,000 years ago by people who sought shelter in the valleys of the Mogotes. The so-called Indian cave, Cueva del Indio, was first discovered in 1920. Mysterious paths and passages lead deeper into the mountain via several large rooms and halls. Farmers recognized the value of this region long ago. Cuba's successful tobacco growing industry began in the 19th century. At that time, large areas of this region consisted of tobacco plantations. Without the profitable cultivation of the legendary tobacco fields and the subsequent processing of the plants, most of the inhabitants of this area could not survive for a long time. The route leads further into the southeast of the country, to the 7 man-made islands of the Indian village of Guam. This untouched, swampy nature reserve with its dense mangrove forest vegetation is an ideal sanctuary for many rare water birds. Legend says that the Siboney Indians sank all their possessions here in the Laguna del Tesoro to protect their gold from the Spaniards. Today, however, there's no hint of this in the calmness of the lagoon. A knowledgeable guide escorts us through the unspoiled nature reserve in search of the unusual. And suddenly, we come across an amazing biological discovery. A fossilized fish that for many years was thought to have been extinct. A state guide leads through the biological reserve to track down the Cuban national bird, tocororo. On the southern section of the peninsula stretch the salinas that are home to pink flamingos. A crocodile breeding station should also not be missed. As though carved from stone, the crocodiles lie around lazily but suddenly become active when the feeding begins. It is untouched nature, hardly known anymore. A place in this world worth protecting and preserving for mankind. Small boats return us to Guam, a replica of a pre-Columbian village of the Siboney Indians. Here, 32 sculptures bid us farewell, the last rays of the sun breathing new life into them. And now the journey continues further southwards, through endless fields of banana plants that are cultivated as part of the country's communist economy. Continuing through small, colourful, sleepy villages, over hilly country roads, past Cuban cowboys, and hordes of workers who harvest sugarcane, with outdated machinery and transport, until Trinidad is reached, the secret centre of the country, founded in 1513 as a third settlement by the Spaniard Velázquez. The luxurious palaces and villas of the sugar barons still make their mark on the city and characterize the style of bygone days. Deeply felt religious traditions are held in high esteem. This palace was built as early as 1740 and was inhabited for many decades by the family of Count Nicolas Brunet. In the former palace of the sugar baron Cantero is the Museo de Historia. The feeling of what it must have been like for the plantation owners to live in this place is overwhelming. Cuba is a melting pot of colonial culture. Nassau is the capital of New Providence Island, one of more than 700 islands in the Bahamian archipelago. Everything from luxury to simple living is represented here, from a hectic to a tranquil atmosphere in the port city. Christopher Columbus looks longingly at the harbour, and Queen Victoria at the English Navy. Pastel-coloured houses like those of confectioners decorate the streets and alleys, and the island of joie de vivre is soon transferred to the visitors. So it is not surprising that about 3.5 million guests visit the Bahamas annually. First, the elite jet set discovered this tax haven. Then followed mass tourism. On a small hill on the western outskirts of Nassau stands Fort Charlotte, which served to defend the city. The Ardastra Gardens are also here with a small zoo, especially attractive to the island children and tourists alike. Trained flamingos form a special attraction, running in circles under the guidance of a trainer. Paradise Island is home to the most modern and spectacular resort in the Bahamas, Atlantis. The largest and most exciting oasis in the world, a world of fantasy. Visitors walk in glass tunnels beneath huge fish tanks and visit amazing caves, while above, it's feeding time for the sharks. Atlantis and the sea in each of its many facets are the central theme of this unique hotel complex, a realm of myth and legend. Dreamlike sandy beaches also belong to the complex, and in Dolphin Cay, the dolphins are allowed to frolic in front of the Atlantis skyline. Not too far away, there's a narrow park on the island, which the Americans generously called Versailles Gardens. This quiet place was once built by the American millionaire Hartford, according to his wishes, on the then still untouched island. Finally, the Blue Lagoon, where trained dolphins perform their tricks. And small islands with iguanas and trusting manta rays. With a powerboat, you can visit the Exuma Islands, where trustful rays in warm water happily accept food from the visitors. Sand Cay. This exotic little island in the sun is the final stop on our trip around this island paradise. Alone under palm trees and the fragrant warm breeze, coconuts everywhere, where one's mind can wander in peace. Is this paradise? The Caribbean islands once also used to attract buccaneers, but since the treasure of the Caribbean no longer exists, neither do they. The pirates of the Caribbean also look somewhat different today. Not pirates, but tourists from all over the world invade, seeking recreation and bringing with them foreign currency. The Caribbean islands have become islands of dreams, and the Caribbean Sea ever more famous for its turquoise, crystal clear water.